When I think of generational health, I think of just being an example of taking care of yourself. You've probably heard it where it's like how you do one thing is how you do everything. And it's like, if you're not committed with being active, it says a lot about how you handle other things within your life, whether it's business, whether it's your relationships. And so it's just being an example of doing what you know you need to do. This is where you're at. You can either settle or you can strive. And through suffering comes progress and reaching your potential. And it carries over into how you do so many other things in your life with your family and in business. Gives you confidence, it gives you energy. So having that mentality, I think, is what creates generational health. I think that like your kids recognize that, and you can only hope that they have some of that motivation throughout their life.
Nate Hill.
Colby.
Welcome to episode number 1 of the Generational Health Podcast.
It's an honor. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
I'm super excited. You and I are friends, so we talk a lot, but this is a different type of conversation. But I'm super excited to just talk through your background and help other people kind of see what I've been able to see firsthand with Strive and your personal life and everything else that you've accomplished. So thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited. I hear podcasts are kind of popular these days.
They're kind of taking off.
Yeah.
It's just a good way to get, I don't know, I think it's just a good way for people to get a little bit more personal and to see kind of the inner workings of, what business people are doing and what health conscious people are doing. So anyway, we thought this would be a fun way to share some knowledge that we have. We make a lot of videos, but sometimes the conversational style is a bit more natural. So anyway, really excited to learn about you. And I think the audience for this is going to be generally people that are interested in business, founders, business people who are just working professionals trying to do better and be better, and health conscious individuals, and those that might be interested in compound pharmacies. And there's a lot of information around medications coming out, specifically around compound pharmacies. And so just want to give you a second, maybe to give a brief background on you and maybe your journey getting into compounding and just the inception of Strive and where that came from.
Sure. Yeah. Love to give a little bit of a background. I think this will be good. I'm not typically the person that's going to get on social media and kind of talk about everything that I'm doing here and there. I'll have a post about Strive and what's going on, but this will be good to kind of take a deeper dive in a lot of the things that we've accomplished. And hasn't been all sunshine and rainbows throughout the process, as any entrepreneur would know. It's a lot of difficult decisions that you have to make throughout the process, but learned a lot along the way. So just a little bit of background. I'm originally from Utah and grew up with my business partner. In middle school we met and went to high school together, did a semester in college together. His name's Mike Walker, and grew up snowboarding in Utah with him. So but I also had a passion for soccer, skateboarding, and just being active. So, did business school at the University of Utah, got a degree there. During that time, I was doing the whole door-to-door sales thing that's very popular in Utah. So did that for several summers. And after I graduated, I continued doing it, just saw different opportunities and had already kind of gotten myself to a certain level, but at some point, moving across the country every summer wasn't very appealing. So knew I needed to somehow even take a step back to then figure out where I wanted to get to later on in life. And I looked for different opportunities in pharmaceutical sales. I don't know why I was particularly interested in that, other than just had known some people that had been successful in it and sounded like, hey, this is more of what I thought would be more of a career sales role. long story short, I ended up finding an opportunity in Arizona. And incidentally, Mike, who I grew up with, he was already here in Arizona and did pharmacy school here. So he had been here, and I was, we knew a couple other people, my wife and I, and we're like, yeah, we can move to Arizona. We know a few people. And so I took a job doing pharmaceutical sales. Mike and I, we had stayed in touch over the years, always talked about starting a business and creating our own wealth and our own careers. And so we had a lot of really bad ideas that we threw at each other. Nothing ever came from them. But once I moved to Arizona and started a new role in pharmaceutical sales, it was a great job. It was, I could definitely have made that a career. But I knew that there was, I don't know, just kind of always had this like never settle mentality, and always trying to look for more opportunities. And so Mike and I, we decided, hey, let's meet every Thursday and let's start brainstorming on some kind of side gig that we can start. And so I think it was the second Thursday. I mean, Mike had been working at a compound pharmacy, and he had told me about compound pharmacies throughout school where he did rotations. Initially, I had no idea what he was talking about. That was before I was in pharmaceutical sales. But I was going around to doctors' offices, detailing them on the different medications that I represented as a pharmaceutical sales rep. And then Mike helped start one. He was a pharmacist that helped start a compound pharmacy that did a hybrid approach of retail meds and pharmaceutical compounds. And it just kind of made sense. It just kind of clicked where we're like, hey, there's tons of opportunity here. There's no one, at least in our area, that was going out and like educating doctors and telling them about the different medications that they could be prescribing their patients for like alternative forms of medications. And so yeah, we put a business plan together. I took an entrepreneurship class in business school. And so I used what knowledge I had, created what was called a lean canvas, where it talks about your different revenue streams, your barriers to entry, what the market looks like. And it was just a big sheet of paper that I went and printed out at Staples or FedEx or something. And we just started slapping sticky notes. And it's just like, at that, we were both young and didn't have a lot of knowledge, but that's, any entrepreneur knows at some point you just got to get started. Mm-hmm. And so that's what we started doing, is just, trying to gather as much information as we could. We knew that we would probably need some kind of business loan. And so we started creating a pro forma, just whatever knowledge we had, we just tried to piece together to try to gather as much information to kind of test to see if this is something that had an opportunity, something that we could do. And so it was just, I even went to like downtown Phoenix to some business center where like incubator, where they kind of walk you through different things on like, hey, to start a business, this is what you need as far as like setting up an entity and all those things. And it's just things that they really don't teach a lot of that stuff in business school. Like, hey, if you're going to go start a business, this is what you need to do. You need to go and set up an entity. You got to set up a bank account. You got to get, tax ID numbers. You got to
raise money.
You got to raise money. Yeah. You got to have money to start a business as well. So yeah, it was all just kind of a dream in the beginning, and like it was starting to feel more real. I think once it really hit us was when we found a location to open up the pharmacy, about 2,000 square feet. And we signed a lease, and that's when, like, if you talk to Mike, like both of us are like, that was the point where it was like, there's no looking back.
Yeah.
But that side gig that we kind of initially set out to create ended up becoming something that we knew we just had to go all in on for it to be successful. And so Mike put in his notice at his pharmacy where he was at. They weren't too happy that he was going and starting a pharmacy right up the street, and they didn't have him sign a non-compete. So, and then I was doing pharmaceutical sales, and we were going through the company was going through some changes on the different medications that they were offering. And so they had announced that they were going to be doing layoffs. And I remember I was packing up to go to California with my family, and I was on the phone. And this was, it was like a month or so before we were supposed to open up Strive. And so I was going to end up quitting anyway. But I remember being on the phone and looking over at my wife, because it was the call to let me know if I was still had a job or if I was going to be let go and get a severance package. And I was like crossing my fingers that I would be let go and get a severance package. And that's what happened. So, but as I've learned throughout building a business, that, you kind of, a lot of unexpected things happen. And so, what I thought would be, I don't know if it was like a 2-month severance and we were going to start in a month. Obviously, yeah, we didn't open in a month. It was like a few months later. And so I was, there was a month or so there to where, I didn't really have an income until we got the pharmacy up and running, because everything, takes longer than you anticipate. So yeah, that's kind of the inception story as far as like us getting it started. And yeah, and Mike was the pharmacist in the pharmacy. I had to be educated from him on these different medications, just because I had literally 3 drugs that I knew about. And, you learn things here and there around like medications when you're in the pharmaceutical industry, but this was a whole new class of therapeutics, with hormone replacement therapy, erectile dysfunction, dermatology, weight loss medications, thyroid, a lot of, and, instead of carrying 3 drugs, now we're talking about, thousands of drugs that we could offer in a compound pharmacy.
So I think one thing that's, I look back at you and Mike, you talk about your relationship, and I actually met both of you. We're from a similar area, but I met both of you playing soccer here in Arizona. We're all kind of active guys, and we're middle-aged in men's leagues, trying to stay young. And you and I were playing against each other. I think that's the first time I actually met you, and you were coming at me hard. And I remember thinking like, man, who is this guy?
You want to know why, right?
Did you sense a little competition?
I did. I looked over and I was like, that guy is fit. I was like, I'm going to send a message
send a message. I felt it. And one of our mutual friends was like, hey, he's a friendly. And I think that next season we ended up on the same team. So being around you and Mike, it's just fun. I think it probably has a lot to do with the culture that you've built at Strive. But you both, like you said, you were snowboarding together and skating and soccer, and you're active, cool guys. And I think that your lifestyles definitely play a role in the culture that I see at Strive Pharmacy, and what kind of just the general culture and the feeling that I see around the company and different individuals that are at the company, and it definitely plays on both of you and really what your interests are. And anyway, but one question I had for you about you and Mike specifically is how you are quite different though. Like, you have these similarities and you have a lot of similar interests, but your personalities are very different. How does that complement? How do you complement each other in the business setting? I know he's the pharmacist and you've got this sales, marketing, kind of branding background. How have your differences helped you to become more successful together?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think anyone that's met us both, even though, we grew up together and had a lot of similarities, we also have a lot of differences. Our personalities are different. I think I'm a little, a little more unpredictable, I guess, or Mike's he's pretty consistent, pretty even killed type of guy. And, I feel like I'm relatively calm individual, but I can get a little goofy. And, I know that there's times where, I'll go off on rants with someone, in the company that, I just feed off of other people's energy and like, just talking about stupid things. But, and I know a lot of times Mike's like, can we just get back on track? Can we just like, get back to work? So the balance is good because he does reel me back in sometimes when we're getting a little sidetracked, where, some people, may look at him as being a little bit more serious, but I've definitely, been around him enough to know that he's got that side that can get a little crazy too. So,
Oh yeah. Well, you
um,
guys, you guys are awesome, and it's fun to see you both. And like I said, you are different, but he has his expertise. He's calculated. He's a pharmacist. He thinks through things differently than you do, but it's almost
yeah.
like together, it's like this really great formula. So I just think it's awesome.
Yeah, and I think we, a lot of people like Mike will be like, Nate's the sales guy, I'm the pharmacist. Um, even sometimes it's been portrayed as like Mike's the pharmacist, Nate's the business guy, and I'm like, he's a business guy too, like through and through. So, it's we just kind of respect what each other's strengths are, and so we've been able to kind of just give each other space and kind of find our lane, I guess. And I think that's pretty unique. I think a lot of business partners probably kind of butt heads based off of different decisions. And there's definitely been tough times as we've been growing this company, but I think it's all come back to kind of just trusting each other. There's been a lot of individuals that have, come through our company that, they had certain desires and certain expectations being a part of this company, and kind of it's been able, at certain points, it's put a wedge in between us, but it came to a kind of a point where both of us are like, hey, like this thing is growing, it's getting big. It's like we just have to make sure we have each other's backs. And I think that was kind of a turning point for us to be able to just make sure we were supporting each other because we recognize what each other's strengths are. I think for me, it's like been a huge focus on like the experience of the company and the brand and what our reputation is. Seeing big picture on like what this could potentially turn into and how people perceive Strive. And I think Mike's done a great job with his, really like big business perspective as well, on different therapeutics and different medications that they're kind of cutting edge or up and coming that we can make sure that we're taking advantage of. He's risk adverse to where he's recognizing, there's risk in going down this road, whether it's certain medications or different business model. But also, he's risk adverse, but he's willing to take risk and kind of, check all the boxes to make sure that we're protected as a company, but also that we're seizing opportunities that are available to us.
So you alluded to some tough times. I'm curious to know what's one of the hardest lessons together that you've had to go through as you've seen Strive grow. And there's been, as you mentioned, lots of change, and maybe there's certain people with different motives. What would you say was one of the hardest lessons that you two had to learn together?
I think it just goes back to remembering that, that we just need to, the two of us just need to make sure that we trust each other. I think that was, not that it was a hard lesson, but it was definitely got to a point where it was, hey, there's a lot of opinions out there. And whether it's people inside the company or people outside the company, everyone's going to give you advice. And throughout the journey, we've done a lot of what you'd consider never been dones, especially for us, right? Like, I kind of joke around a lot where we have like big decisions that we have to make, and I'm very sarcastic, and so I'll be sitting in a meeting and I'm like, hey guys, last time that I had a company like this, this is the decision that I made. And it's just funny because it's definitely gotten bigger than we ever expected. And so obviously I've never grown a company to the size that Strive is, and most likely never will again. But and for that, it's like you're always seeking advice on whether it's growth, whether it's mergers and acquisitions. We've done several acquisitions, and so there's a lot of things that that when it's your first time, you're asking other people for opinions and advice on like what's the best way. Like, is it debt or is it equity that you give out to be able to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish? And everyone's got opinions and may seem like they have more experience than you do. But I think one thing that we learned is that we have to trust our intuition and trust each other, and have each other's backs. And so there's, we've had people in the company, whether it was employees or whether it was certain people consulting or investors, that would tend to try to be very influential in decisions that we are making or question decisions that we are making. And when, this is prior to us going through like a whole rebranding and kind of finding our identity of who we are as a company. And prior to that, like we didn't have it actually written down, but I think innately we just knew what those values were, and things just fell off to us. They didn't feel like they were aligning with what our values were. Because I would speak about our employees and speak about the culture, and it's almost like it was just discredited. And that was like a point where I was like we are where we're at today because of our employees. And so it was just, having those conversations with Mike and like, hey, maybe this isn't the right path. Like the two of us we just need to make those decisions. And so you kind of find the people within your company that have your back and that are like your tribe, and that that when they make decisions, they're not making it out of self-interest or for selfish reasons. They're making those decisions because one, they know it's best for Strive and our employees, but also those people are, they may have their opinions on what they think is best, but they're also checking in with Mike and me, and they're asking, what do you guys want? Like, what's your vision for this? And I think that's where I've gained a lot of respect for individuals in the company, is to where, I think as an entrepreneur and a business owner, you have a different perspective on things. Like, as an employee, obviously you're looking out for yourself and your team. And, there's certain levels of that throughout the company where they look at a lot more than that. But myself and Mike, I know that we're thinking about every one of our employees. We're thinking about our families. We're thinking about the future of Strive. So many different angles that, big decisions that we have to make. It's like you have to trust your intuition. I appreciate people in the company that check in with us and say, hey, what do you guys think? Like, we trust your judgment. Like, this is what I think, but you may be looking at this from a different angle.
So you brought up your employees, and I've got to say, just from the outside looking in, you've done an exceptional job hiring. You have an amazing executive staff. You have employees that are really passionate about Strive, passionate about what you all are doing in the industry. Excited to represent the company, wear your swag, posting on their social media about being part of the organization, why they're so proud to be part of it. You've built a culture of people that are legitimately super excited to be part of the company. And that is, from my standpoint, like from my perspective, is a very difficult thing to do. I'm curious for other entrepreneurs or business owners, especially when it comes to selecting maybe your leadership team. What advice would you have for somebody that's growing a leadership team below them? What advice would you have for them as they look to hire and grow?
Specifically, like a leadership team?
Yeah, like as you've been able to secure some individuals to me that are like exceptional. My question is more around like, how do you find that talent and how do you keep them?
Yeah, I mean, we're always, one thing is like when we look for a leader or we look for, someone to oversee a certain department of the business, obviously, like we look for someone that's smarter than us. Mm-hmm. And I've done that countless times. It's pretty easy, but I'm always looking for someone that is an expert in that specific area. And it just throughout the growth of Strive, like there's so many things that I was overseeing that I had no reason to oversee, but I did, whether it was like creating marketing materials, or doing certain things within accounting or financials and forecasting and creating reports for investors. There's just things that I have to figure out, but they all get to a point where I'm like, this is too much for me. I don't have the skill set. I don't have the experience to take this on. So first thing is to find people that are smarter than you and embrace it as well, because those people are going to take that certain area to a whole nother level than you ever could, just because I had certain experience when we started Strive. We're still relatively young. I don't know, maybe 28, 29. I don't know how old am I? Oh, I guess I was like 30.
That's how old you are, is when you have to start to you can't remember how old you are.
Yeah.
That's how old you are.
Yeah. It's like 30, 31 when we started. So relatively young. And so the only, I really wasn't in a career. I'd done pharmaceutical sales for a couple of years, but I didn't have all this experience around in these different areas. But as an entrepreneur, you try to do what you can until it gets to a certain point, and then recognizing, hey, now's the time that I need to hire someone that can take this on, because it's going to help your company grow by leaps and bounds. And so first thing is hiring people that are better than you. The next thing is those people will prove to you where their loyalty is. And it kind of goes back to, the leaders that we have that constantly check in with Mike and myself and ask what we want. And you see that they make decisions that aren't self-interest, based off of self-interest. They're making decisions that are best for the company, where this affects them, but they're willing to make the decision because they know it's for the for the better for the company. And so those individuals, but then also how they speak about our employees, I think that's another huge point, is you see that they're genuine in talking about the different people within the company and trying to elevate other people within the company, and kind of seeing opportunities for other people, and being there, being a voice for people in their department. So I think that's another huge thing, is recognizing that they really care about people on their team. And then we also have something that Pat, our COO, always talks about, and he says business happens at the speed of trust. So just trusting each other, and I think everyone's true colors always show over time. And so I think it's just the amount of times over and over again that they've proven that that you can trust them, and that they're just going to make decisions that are best for the company, because they're going to grow personally as leaders. But also it's going to help the company grow, which is benefiting everyone.
Yeah. And I think a piece of it too, like I said, you've built an exceptional culture here. And in order to maintain that culture, it feels like you have this leadership team that's amazing. They love and trust and genuinely care about the employees that roll up to them. But it's also making sure that those that are not abiding by the values that you were talking about earlier, that they don't stick around either. I think that's really hard truth about owning and running a business, is that there's times where you got to let go of people too, that don't fit, that just don't fit, and they don't value the different pillars that you've created as an organization, and say, look, this is the essence, the soul, substance, style of your brand, and you have this core set of values, and if you don't live by it, then you don't fit here anymore. And that's a hard thing to do, because we all have personal relationships and we care about people, and the last thing you want to see is someone unemployed. But that's a really tough part of running and owning a business too, is having a leadership team, or a team of people, or yourself, that has also the guts to stick up for the values that you've created and sticking by them. Because if you don't stand up for your own values by not allowing some of these toxic individuals to just roam free in the organization. On
that, we always talk about how we hire and fire to our core values. And right. As we went through a brand identity, figuring out who we are and what our core values were, like that helped us. And we couldn't have done that in the beginning. I think we had to go through some things, and we had to suffer a little bit to really understand like who we were as a company. But once we defined those, then it was like this commitment that you could see everyone say, we have to have the right people in the right seat in the company, and we also need to make sure that we hire and fire to our core values. We've had so many individuals that were just assassins, like in their specific area, and they came in and they were just, you know, top in their department as far as like producers. But that's not everything, right? And we talk about how we'd rather have someone who's like an 80% producer, but also has that team ability, that person that can work with a team and help elevate other people, because you're going to get more out of the whole team if you don't have someone that's bringing other people down, making people feel like they're not good enough, kind of have an ego that they're the best and that no one can play on their level. And that's detrimental to a company, and it's toxic. And we've seen it over and over again. And those are tough decisions that we have to make, because as a company, you look at like what they're doing on as far as production, whether it's someone in the pharmacy, whether it's a sales representative in the company, and you see their numbers, you see how much they're doing, but it's a toxic environment, and it's something that just weighs on you. I think those are the things that have probably kept me up the most at night, is those type of people and issues and how they're affecting other people in the company more than most things, as we've grown this company. And so recognizing that, you know, looking at our core values and looking at those, and then kind of comparing that to the individual, and which of these core values are they not emulating, and then you have to make that decision. Of course, you try to correct people, give them opportunities to change, and remind them of what those core values are. But if it continues to be something that, you know, is not improving, it's like you have to make that tough decision, because, and we've seen it over and over again, that you know, our company thrives once we make those decisions. Never have we once regretted making a decision like that someone wasn't representing these core values, had to make a decision to let them go, and the company and that department specifically was able to thrive based off of that decision.
When those decisions are difficult, and they can be emotional, right? And I've been close with you through the years since Strive started. You know, we've been friends, and I've seen moments where people that you really care about that didn't fit the core values, you had to make those tough decisions. And I just don't want to like pass over how seriously you take those, how emotional it gets, and how difficult it is to keep those core values aligned for the sake of the rest of the employees. And I think that has been one of the biggest things I've noticed that probably builds a ton of loyalty with the rest of the company. Yeah. I mean, they see you as a leader willing to take these really difficult steps for the betterment of the organization. And to me, I just want to congratulate you on that, because I know that's really difficult and hard to do. But you guys have done a great job maintaining those core values and trickling down to the rest of the organization. So, and I think that builds a ton of just credibility with your brand and with your employees, and probably part of the reason why I see so many people just like so excited to be part of what you all are doing. So
yeah, I think it sets a precedence for the rest of the employees, like you're saying, because when you show that you're serious about those core values, that it's not, I think a lot of companies, they'll have like a poster with their core values in the break room or something, but we legitimately, like through our Slack channels, we highlight individuals in the company. We allow our employees to shout out their coworkers for a specific situation or example of what they did that exemplified that core value. And so we're constantly seeing people just have a lot of buy-in to those core values. And also, like we do awards, like we do like an award at the end of the year for someone who emulated the core values based off of shout outs from the rest of the company. And so I think it's something that people are like, oh, they're serious about this. It's not just something that's in your handbook and then you never talk about. They see us how we take action, and there's things that we do to recognize people that emulate those core values, but then also they see how we're serious and we'll make decisions and have to let people go if they're not they're not aligned with those core values, and it definitely sets the bar. So when people come into the company, it's I know that employees, though, like, that's contagious, and that's something that when someone comes in and they're getting trained and there may be a situation and an employee steps in and they're like, hey, that's not cool, we don't do that. Like, you gotta be egoless. So
it's awesome, man. Seriously, it really is incredible. I want to shift gears a little bit now. This is the Generational Health Podcast, so we do focus on a lot of health related things. Clearly, you are the CEO of a large compound pharmacy, which plays a role in the healthcare system in the United States. I'd love to know what motivates you the most to make this a successful venture. I mean, you guys have obviously grown pretty big. You got a lot of employees now. How many employees? We're probably, you think, over 700 now? Somewhere in there?
Yeah,
600,
about 725.
725 employees. And it's just been in a few years. It's just grown very, very fast. So with that, during that growth phase, kind of trickling in, there's two parts of this I'd like to dive into. One being, your passion and drive in this space and your motivation for continuing to just dominate in this space. And then trickling into the health side of it and how during this growth phase, how it's personally impacted you and things that you do to help, at home and help balance all the things out of just being a working professional that's got your hands completely full in a number of different things. So those are kind of the two avenues I'd love to go down right now. So first, with Strive itself, what drives you guys to be successful in the compounding space today? And what role do you feel like you play in the United States healthcare system?
What drives us around like the healthcare aspect, or just from a business?
Yeah, I'd say so like a big part of what I've noticed on your website and other things is kind of that personalized side of medicine.
Yeah.
So maybe it would help if you explained, what's the difference between you and maybe like a large pharmaceutical company, and what role does that play and why is it important within the U.S. healthcare system? Yeah,
definitely. I think a lot of people, they don't know about compound pharmacies until they have to use one. I think more so the last couple of years with everything around the GLP-1s, compound pharmacies have been highlighted a lot more. There's also been a lot of misinformation on what compound pharmacies do because they've been around long before these weight loss drugs became so popular. But compound pharmacies, they're unlike retail pharmacies that are basically stocking commercial products, whether they're generics or brand name pharmaceutical drugs. They have certain strengths and doses that are approved, and they're manufactured in masses. One could say it's somewhat of a one size fits all approach. They have different strengths that you can kind of adjust, but it's pretty much set like what's available. So compound pharmacy is just more customized. There are certain medications that are just not commercially available. But then there's medications we offer that can be tweaked. So just based off of what the needs are of the patient, if there's certain allergy reactions or certain side effects that they have, there's things that can be added in to kind of offset those side effects as well, or different ways of routes of administration. So if something is only available in a tablet, but there could be an infant that can't take that tablet, it can be broken down and made into an oral suspension, or we can make things into creams, capsules, lozenges, or troches that they're called, and they dissolve under the tongue, and then also injectables. So, we can make things in a lot of different forms that may not be available. We can make them in different strengths. And then we can also add things. We can also take things out of the medications. So it's very much personalized based off of what the patient's needs are. I think a lot of times I've used an example of, you have a middle-aged woman that goes into the doctor and is just not feeling good. And she's trying to explain how she's feeling and saying that she's not, maybe she's not motivated, maybe she's gaining weight, maybe she's got brain fog. And I think a lot of times nowadays, as you go into like your primary care physician, they kind of relate that. A lot of times they're like, hey, let's just slap a Band-Aid on it. Let's, maybe it's antidepressant, maybe it's anti-anxiety medication or something, when no one's really saying, hey, let's check your blood. Let's do your blood work. Let's see what makes up your blood and see if there's any hormones that are out of balance. And so the clinics that we work with, that's pretty much the first step, is to take their blood, draw their blood and look at it and be like, okay, where's your estrogen? Where's your testosterone? Where's your progesterone? All these different markers that are going to be able to relate back to what some of those symptoms are. And let's get those balanced out first, see how you feel, to see if it's necessary to use some of these medications. And I'm not saying that they don't serve a purpose, but I think sometimes it's a little backwards on how we're deciding what a patient gets as far as the medication. And so based off of that blood work, our compound pharmacy can make up specifically to how much their levels need to go up. And that's something that you can't get from your typical retail pharmacy. So we do order in the raw chemicals or powders. And then we have labs inside our pharmacies where they're mixing up, they're creating these medications. They're, verified, they're tested by pharmacists. We do a lot of third-party testing on our medications to test for potency, sterility, endotoxins, to make sure that they're safe for the patient. So that's kind of what a compound pharmacy does. As far as like motivation behind that, like everyone's different. I think everyone has a different health journey. Everyone's unique in not just like what medications they need, but also like what their motivation is and what their goals are, right? Like you look at someone, that's active, right? If you tell someone that you're active, that could mean so many different things, right? Like if you like weight training, powerlifting, if you're a runner, if you're, skateboarder, if you're a swimmer, surfer, there's so many, if you love going on hikes, like everyone is different on how they want to stay healthy, right? Mm-hmm. And that's just from like an active lifestyle, but also like diet. Like everyone's different on, some people are lactose intolerant. Some people like doing a high protein diet. Some people like just counting their macros, and then others will do like, keto or paleo. And it's not that there's any of those are wrong. It's just that every individual gets to make that decision on like what works best for them and how they can stay or how they can stay active. And so it's kind of like they get a customized approach on how you're going to take care of your health, but it should be the same with medications as well. And just because you feel good doesn't mean you can't feel great. And I think that's what our focus is at Strive Pharmacy and compound pharmacies, is to help people feel even better, and not just feel good. And so that's what motivates us, is to kind of help people accomplish those things, all those things that they love to do to stay active, that they're choosing to do those things to stay healthy. There's different medications, different supplements, there's peptides, there's things like that that are going to allow you to do those things for longer and feel better while doing it. Mm-hmm. So, and I look at, my kids and the opportunity that I have at, I'm pushing 40 years old now, but I'm still skateboarding, snowboarding, playing soccer with my kids. And they get to enjoy the things that I've been so passionate about. But, I think any individual wants to be able to do that with their kids, or just by themselves, right? That's just be able to do those activities for as long as you can. And that's what motivates us at Strive Pharmacy, is that people should have the option to choose what works best for them to accomplish their goals.
That's awesome. Yeah, we're kind of, obviously, so we have Hiva Health on my side, right? And, you brought up labs, and it just feels like I'll get people that ask me, what do you eat? Can you put a meal plan for me together? What do you do at the gym? It's kind of just like, well, because they feel off.
Yeah.
It's like, well, if you got your blood work done, like, let's start there. Like, let's just take a look under the hood and see like where you're at metabolically before you start trying to do anything else. And I love that this is becoming a lot more popular and becoming more accessible for people, and that companies like Strive or like Hiva Health and many other really great clinics out there are providing access for people to actually optimize their health versus just wait around until one day they're super sick and they go into their doctor and then they say, okay, yeah, you're showing all the symptoms. Let's pull your labs. And then you have something chronic that they can't fix, and it's just downhill from there. So for me, you and I are in a very similar boat, and on a, getting to like more of a personal level, what's the purpose behind trying to optimize your health? It's different for everybody. But you've got 3 awesome kids. You've got an awesome wife. And I've got 5 kids and an awesome wife. And for me, that is the reason I want to be around for all of it, and I see people in my life, family members, people who have passed, that they didn't get to enjoy life as long as they probably could have if they would have gotten ahead of it, And I think for so long, hormone replacement, hormone treatments, they've been kind of taboo because they've been associated with like bodybuilders and steroids and all that. That's not what it's about. It's about staying optimized and being in that normal range. I don't think people realize, I know people don't realize how off their hormones are for a very long time. And then they finally are just like, I should probably get checked. And then they do. And it's just like, for the last decade, you could have been feeling great. You could have been preserving your joints and your tendons to allow you to snowboard and skateboard and play soccer and coach and do all the things that you enjoy doing. You could have done that a lot longer if you got ahead of it. So I love that Strive is helping clinics by providing that access to allow people to get ahead of it and to stay healthy longer, so they can enjoy the finer things in life, those things that are far more important than really even work and all this stuff. Spending that time with your kids and with your wife for a long, long, long time, and not just like spending time with them and being alive, but living, like being alive and being active and being able to enjoy the things you like doing, which is really cool. So I'm curious, like for you personally, as a dad, I know that you're the CEO of Strive. You talked about all the acquisitions. You've talked about all the people coming at you, investors and others trying to talk you into this or that. You've talked about your explosive growth, 725 employees. You've talked about your culture. You've talked about people that don't fit the culture and some of the tough decisions that you've had to make. It's endless. Lawsuits, it goes on and on, right? How do you personally balance that out with family life and with the stuff that I would argue is the reason for all of it? So how do you keep that in balance? I know that neither of us are perfect.
No, not by any means.
but what things are you trying to do to keep that in balance? On a day-to-day, especially right now when you're kind of at this point where it's probably busier than ever, how do you keep that in check?
Yeah, no, I think it's important to point out that it, not perfect, and that I have my shortcomings when it comes to balancing things that are going on, but I have a very supportive wife, understanding that, I'm taking care of my family, but also, 700 other families, right? Within the company. So, but also she sees like the passion, right? And the opportunity that we have here at Strive, but also, I try to do my best to prioritize our family. Feel like on the weekends, we have commitments, right? So we're running kids to soccer. I've been coaching soccer for the last several years, recently taking a step back, but still, being able to watch from like the sidelines and just enjoy it I'm excited for that. Still going to be there for my kids, but being able to like have more opportunities to make sure I'm getting out to where I need to be with everything going on at Strive is important. And I think hopefully my kids are recognizing, the motivation behind that, and that you can accomplish big things in your life. But I think, just finding different commitments and different routines with your family that you can commit to throughout the week, and just setting boundaries. And I think we've done a good job as a leadership team and supporting each other in that. And like, we have certain people on our executive team that like to, just keep going at night. And we've had conversations where like, go home to your family. So we don't want them to hate Strive and feel like we're requiring them to be here. We try to encourage people to take time off and to spend time with their family. And so I think by doing that, it kind of gives us the, a little bit more, not justification, but it allows me to be a little more okay with like spending time with my family and taking time off to make sure that I have some balance there. Because I think just like anyone, especially with growing a business, you look back and you're like, how's it been, at this point, how's it been 7 years that we've just been grinding, and how are my kids as old as they are? But I think everyone looks back and sees that. But I also look back, like, scroll through my phone on like all the different things that we've done, and I've created a lot of cool experiences with my family. So definitely it's a constant kind of like personal check to make sure that you're like, hey, when I'm home, I need to be home, and need to make sure that I'm spending time with my family. So it's my wife, she's good at reminding me of that too.
I think it's hard, right? As you know, I left corporate America, where you get into a groove, and work-life balance is a lot easier in that setting than in an entrepreneurial hustle and bustle startup grind setting. And I've noticed even myself, I've always had a healthy lifestyle. I have no problem getting up and going to the gym. I love going to the gym or exercising or whatever it might be. I generally eat pretty healthy. But I've noticed in the last year, even myself, it starts to slip. I sleep less because I work longer, or like there's just days where my workouts are shorter because I got to hurry on to something else. Or like my meals, I'll find myself skipping meals. We were talking about that yesterday. Yeah. You're just like, man, I forgot to eat. It was like 2:00 in the afternoon and you hadn't eaten since early in the morning. And it's easy to let these things slip if you don't stay on top of it, especially as a busy, like working professional that has a demanding job. It's important to make sure that you take care of yourself and that you take care of your family first and foremost. And you mentioned one of your executives, that likes to stick around and work. And I think I know who you're talking about. But you kind of have to set these boundaries or do certain things to remind yourself. And one thing he does is he sets an alarm every day. I hear that alarm go off and it reminds him, I got to stop working and I need to go home. Sometimes he pushes snooze, not on purpose. Maybe I pushed it for him one time. It was kind of funny because I was around him and I heard this phone going off and I'm like, what the heck? So I pushed the snooze button. But sometimes you got to remind, it's just an awesome reminder. I just love that about him, that it's just like this awesome reminder that, hey, I got to get home to what's important.
I think it, even though all of us don't have an alarm, everyone hears it and everyone's like, oh, that's his alarm to go home. And we're like,
time to go.
Do we all need to go home?
Sometimes you don't know. Sometimes you just need that alarm to go off because we get so distracted and so like buried in what's also very important and super urgent. You guys have a lot of important, urgent things going on.
Yeah. The grind's important. And I think you see a lot of that with influencers and social media on, sleep is for the week, and like you gotta work like 60 hours a week and all of that. And it's like, I think looking back, like, there's weeks that are exhausting, but the work's going to be there tomorrow too. You can pick back up where you left off and you can grind again for the time that you're there. But I think you can grind longer and you don't get burnout if you can find some balance in your life. And I think I remember early years talking to as we were recruiting salespeople within the company. I remember asking them like, sales is a tough job. It's got a lot of ups and downs. You're going to have a lot of wins, but you're also going to have a lot of losses. What do you do in your life that helps you kind of reset and find balance so that when you show up to work, you can show up like 100%. Mm-hmm. And so I think that that's something that I've tried to kind of set an example with, is like, hey, we want you to have passions. We want you to be motivated by something outside of work. Because I think it carries over into your confidence when you show up to work and how you do your job, especially in a company that is around, the name Strive, right? And so, it's around health and making yourself better.
No, that's awesome, man. Everything at work tends to feel like it's a priority and that it's urgent and that it's highly important, and it might be, but like you said, it never goes away. It's going to be there tomorrow over and over and over again. And so, yeah, I think showing up to work your best self is key. I know we're bumping up against time. So I just wanted to ask 2 final questions. First, is there anything that you would have done differently, knowing what you know now over the last few years? Strive, family, all of it. Looking back, lessons you've learned, what would you have done differently, if anything?
No regrets. No, that's a hard question because, a lot of decisions, a lot of mistakes that I've made have kind of shaped to who we are today. And I don't know if I would have been able to make some of the more difficult decisions that I'm making now had I not gone through what I did in the past. So yeah, there's some things I look back and I'm like, with the knowledge that I have now, I'm like, yeah, we could have made a better decision there. We could have done this a little bit differently. So it's hard. It's one of those things where you want to say, no, I wouldn't have done anything differently. Obviously I could say, find more balance between family time and business, but I also feel like I've done a pretty good job with that. I think it's more just like when you are home, make sure that you're present. So that's one thing that I can say that I'm always trying to be better at, and I recognize that I'm trying to satisfy a lot of people, whether it's my family at home or people in the company, that they're putting in so much work. And they're, if they reach out to me, I'm just trying to give them the support that they need. But I don't, to really answer that question, I would say no, just because I know that I've learned a lot. We've made what you'd consider mistakes, but we're making some of those same decisions, but on a bigger level now. And I think it would be more detrimental had I not, like, making those decisions now and making the wrong decision versus having gone through something similar to where I'm like, have my guard up and I can be a little more calculated in how I approach it.
It's kind of that Elon Musk mentality when people try to give him flack for one of his rockets blowing up. He's like, no, we want it to blow up because that's how we learn, right? We don't want someone to be in it. We want to learn from these really tough, expensive mistakes, so that when we put a human being in that rocket, it's not going to blow up. Yeah. So anyway, that's really good. And my last question here really goes around just the theme of this podcast is, when you hear the idea of building generational health, what does that mean to you?
I mean, when I think of generational health, I think of just being an example of taking care of yourself. I think there's a lot of people watching, whether it's your kids or whether it's employees or, just other people in your circle, right? And it's like, I think, you've probably heard it where it's like, how you do one thing is how you do everything. And it's like, if you're not committed with your health, if you're not committed with being active, it says a lot about how you handle other things within your life, whether it's business, whether it's your relationships. And so when I think of generational health, it's just being an example of doing what you know you need to do to be healthy, to make right decisions. I know that our kids, they're aware that there's good things that you can put in your body, good things that you can eat, and there's things that aren't good for you. And it doesn't mean that we're not allow them to eat, some junk food or some treats, but they know that, like, there's, eating some of these things in moderation and being aware that, like, hey, if I eat a lot of these things, it's going to make me feel bad. And these are the things that are healthy. These raw foods, the high proteins, clean foods are always going to make them feel better. And so just trying to be an example of that kind of makes me think of generational health. I think of, strive from the beginning. Our slogan, that I came up with was, why settle when you can strive? And that's how we've kind of tried to build our culture around. And it's not just like in business. I mean, it is in business as well, where it's like, hey, like, I look at where we're at today, and I've had this conversation, I mean, over and over again, because, we've been able to accomplish a lot of things in different stages. And I'm like, you look at where we're at and what we've accomplished, and you have to be proud of it. But also you look ahead and you're like, there's so much opportunity. There's so many things right now that we can do to improve our company and continue to grow and be a better company. I think that's something that motivates me, but that applies to, like, your personal life as well, to where it's like, this is where you're at. You can either settle or you can strive, and you can put in the work. I mean, I've done door-to-door sales. I've done CrossFit for years, not as much anymore, but I still learned something, as far as, like, I learned suffering in both of those things. And through suffering comes progress and reaching your potential. And I've seen that in business. I've seen that in my health as well. Just knowing that, hey, this is where I'm at right now. And I know, and also looking back at, maybe times in my life where I was, like, in the best shape of my life or most dialed in. And I'm like, I know how it feels, and it feels awesome. And it's like, and so it's kind of like this baseline to where it's like, you can kind of feel yourself getting off of that. And it's just created a lifestyle to where I'm like, I know I need to, like, make an effort. I need to drive myself to get back to feeling like that, because it feels good. And it carries over into how you do so many other things in your life, with your family and in business. Gives you confidence. It gives you energy. And so having that mentality, I think, is what creates generational health. I think that, like, your kids recognize that, and you can only hope that they, have some of that motivation throughout their life.
That's awesome, man. All right. So Strive's going through a lot of growth, a lot of other things. If people want to follow along with what Strive's doing, whether it's clinics or others, where's the best place to follow you guys and
our team, our creative department, our marketing team are doing an awesome job with putting out content. So Instagram,
what's
at Strive Pharmacy.
At Strive Pharmacy on Instagram. Yeah.
Myself at Nitro Nate. Maybe not as active as Strive Pharmacy is, but I'll, share things.
Well, and you've got some updates on your website too, right? Recently, I know there's a lot going on with litigation around GLP-1s and other things. Yep. So if people want to follow along that, they just go to your website. strivepharmacy.com//strive forward. And so there's different things that they can do to get involved, whether it's sharing your story about how personalized medicine has changed your life. We're going to have, we have a specific merch line of t-shirts and things that you can wear proudly and rep it. And then also there's, like, images that you can download, whether it's like a banner for LinkedIn, whether it's a story on Instagram. You can download those right from the website, be able to support Strive and what our mission is to defend personal healthcare. So very good. Nate, thank you for your time, man. Appreciate you coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. We'll do it again.
All right. Thanks.
Okay.